name's Darcy and I'm a children's therapist at North Kent Mind. We are an independent mental health charity operating in Dartford, Gravesham, Swanley and Medway, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to support your child with anger. So first of all, what is anger? Anger is defined as a bodily reaction to something that happens around us or within us, and it's a very normal part of being a human. No emotions are good or bad, they're all valid, they're just feelings, but anger becomes a problem if it's felt too intensely, too often, or expressed in an unhealthy way, such as with aggression. And in this case, aggression is defined as the behaviour of lashing out at a person or object with the intention of causing harm. Of course, aggression usually happens when someone is angry, but angry does not mean aggressive. And one thing I thought might be useful for you today would be to break down some common myths and misconceptions about what anger actually is. So the first one is that how we express anger is inherited and can't be changed. So while our facial expressions and how our nervous system responds to anger initially is inherited, what we do next in our behaviour is actually a learned response, and we're not born with a set specific way that we respond to anger. This means it is possible to learn more appropriate ways of expressing that anger, and it's also possible with time and practice to teach our nervous system to calm down quicker than it would biologically. The next myth is that being aggressive is the only or the best way to get what you want, and many people actually confuse assertiveness with aggression. The goal of aggression is to dominate, intimidate, harm, or even injure someone else, to win at any cost. However, the goal of assertiveness is to express feelings of anger in a way that is respectful of other people. Expressing yourself in an assertive way does not blame or threaten other people and minimises the chance of emotional harm. It is actually much more useful at communicating your needs or feelings. And the last myth is that the only way to express anger effectively is with aggression. So, for many years, there's been a popular belief that aggressive behaviour towards non-human objects, such as screaming, biting pillows, punching walls, was a healthy and therapeutic method of dealing with those feelings. But research studies have actually found that people who vent their anger aggressively simply get better at being angry. And it's important that we help people, especially children, learn ways to cope with those feelings that don't involve hitting or damaging things. Because over time, what will happen is those connections in our brain will strengthen and we tend to fall back on those habits a lot easier. How do we actually look at anger as an emotion? Well, it's very complicated. We sometimes think of it like the tip of the iceberg, with lots of things going on underneath it. Anger can make us act in ways that we're not proud of. We might say the wrong thing or do something we later regret because we're not thinking clearly. Of course, it can also be a good thing. It can motivate us to achieve a goal. For example, the women's right to vote only came about because people were angry enough to make a change. And it's important that we don't vilify anger, that we see it as more than just a negative thing. Especially when it comes to children, we can use anger like a communicative tool. It can let us know that there's things going on under the surface for them, like maybe sadness, grief, jealousy, shame, hunger, tiredness. The possibilities are endless, but if we see a response to a trigger that seems disproportionate, if a child's anger doesn't match the thing that set them off, it might be a good indicator that there's something more going on for them and we need to dig a little bit deeper to understand it. So how can we help young people break that habit of expressing anger with aggression? The conversations need to start when they're feeling calm, ideally in a safe place, like at home or in the car. You might be able to get them talking about a recent time that they felt angry and then work with them to notice what might have triggered that incident. Were there any events on that day that led to that feeling? Were there any feelings under the surface of that iceberg that may have made it worse? See if you can help them find some themes in what sets their anger off. For example, if a child is ignored when they ask a question in class, and then their friends don't pay attention when they're telling a story, they might seem really disproportionately angry if you don't hear them ask what's for dinner. But the theme here might be that they are feeling ignored, and that seemingly small trigger has led to a huge amount of anger. Once you've identified some triggers, you can then learn to spot the cues and what it feels like in the body to be angry. To begin with, it can be easier to model being curious about your own cues, such as saying, "Oh, when I'm angry, my thoughts get very loud, my hands get really sweaty." To help your young person identify their own cues, you could say something along the lines of, I've noticed that when you're angry, your voice seems to get louder than usual and you maybe get a bit shaky in the legs. Have you noticed that as well? Be curious and calm though. Try not to tell them how they feel, but make a suggestion and then ask for their input. They'll often tell you if you've got it wrong. And by doing this alongside them, not only will they get better at spotting the anger in themselves sooner, you also might learn some cues that you didn't know before. And once we know what we're looking for, we can notice it sooner. And then we can create space between the trigger and the behaviour. Space is really important when it comes to anger management because it means that we have more time to make the right choice. Without even realising it, by having these conversations in an open and caring way, you're letting a young person know that it's okay to be angry and that you're working with them to manage it in a positive way. So, what can we do in the moment to manage those feelings of anger? There are some things we can try, and we think of it a little bit like a first aid kit. So these things might not prevent it from happening in the first place, but they can help to soothe those feelings in the moment. The first step is to try a timeout. Now, this doesn't mean a punishment, but it means a literal break from the situation. Anyone in a situation can call a timeout, can be the young person or an adult. And when that timeout is called, everyone steps away for a few minutes until they can think more clearly. And this means, in the literal sense, you leave the room. Getting that person or the situation that's triggered you out of eyesight can help to give a physical gap between the feeling and the decision of what you do next, which, as we've already said, is really important. Then we have breathing exercises, which are the most direct way to calm down the nervous system. When we're in fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in to prepare our body for action. And this is what causes our heart to beat faster, our body to sweat, and our lungs to breathe short and shallow. By controlling the breath, we can help to force restart the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the body down after fight or flight has been activated. I always remember that the golden rule is to breathe out for longer than you breathe in. So it might be in for 4, out for 7, in for 1, out for 3. As long as you're getting more breath out than in, it will definitely help. So don't worry too much about the numbers. Next, an energy matching activity can help provide space to feel that feeling. So as we spoke about earlier, this doesn't mean punching walls or biting pillows. We want to exert energy in a way that feels helpful without being aggressive. For example, sprinting to the end of the road and back, doing 15 star jumps or really hard push-ups against a wall. You might also feel that energy matching music helps, like heavy rock. So singing along to that loud music is a really good way to let out the energy, especially for a young person who tends to shout or scream when they're frustrated. Finally, a diversion can help bring someone back to the present moment once they've gained enough space from the trigger to have some rational thinking. So games like the A to Z game, where you list something for every letter of the alphabet in a category, like celebrities or types of fruit, can take the young person's mind off of the trigger for just a couple of minutes. For younger children, a colour listing game might be easier. So for example, can you tell me 5 things in this room that are yellow? This strategy is best used after one or all of the others, as often if you ask a child to name you 5 green things when they're at the height of their anger, it might not go down too well. So what about in the long term? Working on anger and improving behaviour choices is a long process. Styles of thinking and behaving are often deeply ingrained habits, like ski trails down a slope, and children form these ski trails from a very young age. It takes a lot of work and practice to form new trails down the slope. And even then, the old trails won't disappear completely, so it's likely that old habits will come back from time to time, especially during times of higher stress and anxiety. And that is okay. It's important to remember that progress is still progress, no matter how slow. Have the conversations with your young person about anger when you're both feeling calm. It's very difficult to stay completely calm when someone in the room with you is angry, and it's often tempting to start those conversations about their anger in the moment. And this is usually because we want to help. However, it often means that young people aren't able to listen or speak in a rational way, and no matter how well you word it, they won't receive it in the way you want them to. In that moment, stick to the first aid kit, and then come back later when you're both relaxed to discuss the situation. You can also model the behaviour choices you want to see. So each time you're able to role model coping with anger in a healthy way, the young person is going to learn from you. For example, when you're frustrated, saying, I'm feeling really angry right now, I'm going to go into the next room for a few minutes until I feel calm. You can model doing a breathing exercise when you're stressed, or even ask them to help you and do an activity. You might say, I'm feeling really irritated right now. Please can we play a game of A to Z to take my mind off things? All of these tactics will show them the tools that they can choose from when they're dysregulated, and that will make them more likely to choose them for themselves. And finally, taking care of yourself is possibly the most important part of managing anger in children. It's incredibly stressful to support a child who struggles with anger, and we often feel burned out and exhausted ourselves. In the same way that a child might have a short temper if they haven't slept well or eaten food, you're going to be much less equipped to deal with anger in a calm way if your own resources are running low. So make sure you take time for yourself to do things that make you feel relaxed, and ask for support from loved ones or professionals around you to deal with the practical and emotional difficulties you're facing. It's an age-old saying, but it's always true. You just can't pour from an empty cup. If you'd like to seek further support and advice about coping with anger, there are services and resources available to you. Here at North Kent Mind, we have the Short Intervention Therapy Service, which offers short-term therapy to young people in Medway with a social worker or early help worker. Therapy is offered in multiple formats and modalities, and young people can be referred in by any professional supporting the family, like social workers, CAMHS workers, or even your GP. North Kent Mind also have a school coaching service, which operates within schools in North Kent and Medway to support pupils with their emotional well-being. You can contact your school to find out if the service is available to your young person. Some other resources include websites like Kooth, Shout, Papyrus and Anxiety UK, and in particular the Young Minds website might be especially helpful as it has a Parents A to Z section. They also have a helpline specifically for parents and carers that might need more advice.